With the second choice in the draft, the San Diego Chargers select quarterback, Washington State University, Ryan Leaf.
Ryan Leaf was one of the most hyped up quarterback prospects in NFL history, with some even believing he should be drafted ahead of Peyton Manning.
When Peyton Manning came out of college, the same year Ryan Leaf did, I preferred Ryan Leaf.
But after a disaster of an NFL career,
don't talk to me, all right? Knock it off!
Leaf tragically hit rock bottom. This is the rise, fall, and redemption of the biggest bust in NFL history. Ryan Leaf grew up in the small Montana town Great Falls. In the middle of his junior year, he took over as his high school starting quarterback and led them all the way to a state championship victory. As Leaf found success on both the gridiron and basketball court, he realized he was starting to get placed on a pedestal. He could act out however he wanted, and there would be no consequences because the team needed him to play for them to win. People in the surrounding towns thought Ryan was such a showboat and so arrogant, they came to games just to boo him. A few games into his senior season, Leaf broke his thumb. While being sidelined for 2 games, his backup started to play well. Afraid he would lose his team to this other quarterback, while sitting in class, Ryan cut off his cast so he could go back out there and play. The University of Miami recruited Leaf, but wanted him to play linebacker or tight end, not quarterback. But then during the Rose Bowl, Washington State head coach Mike Price called Ryan and said, "If you come here, we're going there." In that moment, Leaf was all in on the Cougars and committed to play for the school. Mike Price's recruiting promise came to fruition during Leaf's junior season. Washington State started the 1997 season unranked, but after going 10-1 during the regular season, the Cougars made it to the Rose Bowl. Although they ultimately lost versus number 1 ranked Michigan, Ryan Leaf had become a household name during the season. That year, he had the second highest passer rating in the nation and finished 3rd in Heisman voting behind winner Charles Woodson and Peyton Manning, who came in 2nd. Although Leaf led the Cougars to their first Rose Bowl since 1931, he wasn't necessarily liked on campus. There was a joke at the school that the difference between Ryan Leaf and God was, God doesn't think he's Ryan Leaf. After his outstanding junior season, Leaf declared for the 1998 NFL Draft. During the pre-draft process, the big debate was which of these star quarterbacks should go first overall, Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf. Some GMs preferred Leaf because he was more athletic and had a stronger arm than Manning. The Colts held the number 1 overall pick, and their scouting department was split 50-50 between Leaf and Manning. Even though no one knew which quarterback would go first overall, it was clear that both would be selected with the first 2 picks in the draft. The Chargers, the team with the 3rd overall pick, were so desperate for one of these 2 future franchise quarterbacks, they traded 2 firsts and a 2nd-round pick to move up just 1 spot to 2nd overall. In the end, the Colts ultimately drafted Manning after he had an outstanding workout and meeting with the team. So of course, Ryan Leaf went 2nd overall to the Chargers. But despite being the 2nd overall pick, Ryan got the largest rookie signing bonus in NFL history at the time. However, the quarterback's NFL career didn't get off to a good start. After skipping the final day of the league's mandatory rookie symposium, he was fined $10,000. Despite concerns surrounding his attitude, the Chargers named the rookie their QB1. During the preseason, Manning and Leaf faced off, but when the 2 went head-to-head, Leaf actually played better than Manning, and some felt the Colts had made a mistake with the number 1 overall pick. But once the regular season started, things went downhill for the Chargers quarterback. On his first ever NFL snap, he fumbled and went on to throw 2 interceptions later in the game. However, the Chargers did manage to win their first 2 matchups of the season, despite their QB's poor play. Before the team's Week 3 game, Leaf's turf burn turned into a staph infection that sent him to the hospital. But the quarterback rallied and was healthy enough to play on Sunday. Little did he know, that would be the game that changed his life forever. In that matchup with the Chiefs, Ryan Leaf completed just 1 of his 15 passes for 4 yards, 2 interceptions, 4 fumbles, and a passer rating of literally 0. And the day after his first ever pro loss, this happened with a beat reporter.
Don't talk to me, all right? Knock it off!
The next day, he read an apology off a piece of paper to reporters. But the thing was, Ryan didn't even write the apology. His dad did for him. When he finished reading it, he crumpled the paper up in a ball and threw it in his locker. He simply didn't care, and things only went downhill from there. The following week, he threw 4 interceptions in the first half versus the Giants, and after completing just 4 of his 15 passes for 16 yards and an interception in the team's Week 10 loss versus the Broncos, he was benched. Leaf finished his rookie season by completing just 45 55% of his passes for 2 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. But Ryan Leaf wasn't just a bad quarterback his rookie season, he was also a bad teammate. He was known to have a poor ethic, leaving the team's facility to go play golf while the other quarterback sat and watched film. He never took responsibility for his bad play and blamed losses on his teammates. The Chargers GM at the time, Bobby Beathard, said this of the QB, quote, "Guys can be jerks, but I've never seen a guy that worked harder at alienating his teammates. Junior Seau, Rodney Harrison, they came to me and said, 'Bobby, this guy is killing me.'" Rodney Harrison even admitted the 1998 season was such a nightmare due to Ryan Leaf's immaturity, he probably would have quit playing if he had to go through another season like that. Before the start of the 1999 season, the Chargers veteran defensive players met with management and asked them to bring in a veteran quarterback. Junior Seau said, quote, "Get a guy in here not to babysit, but to win." During the very first practice of 1999's training camp, Ryan Leaf suffered a season-ending shoulder injury. But being sidelined didn't stop the young quarterback from acting out. During a training camp practice that he was just spectating, a fan started to heckle him. Leaf then went to confront the fan, but was held back by coaches who said, "Don't do it, Ryan. Don't do it." Then in November, he got into a shouting match where he cursed at the Chargers GM Bobby Beathard as well as a coach, resulting in him being suspended 4 games and fined. In spite of all this, Ryan Leaf was the Chargers QB1 to start the 2000 season. In the team's first game, Leaf completed just 43% of his passes for 180 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 2 fumbles. In week 4, he suffered a wrist injury that sidelined him for a few games. But while Leaf was telling the team his sprained wrist hurt too much to practice, he was going out and playing golf. He then decided to rule himself out for a game that was 11 days away, which angered a lot of his teammates. In the 11 games Leaf played in 2000, he won just 1, completing only 50% of his passes for 1,800 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 18 interceptions. After the season ended, the Chargers released him, and 2 days later, the Buccaneers signed Leaf. He performed poorly in the preseason and was asked to be the team's 4th-string QB, plus take a pay cut. He refused and was subsequently cut right before the start of the 2001 season. The Cowboys then signed Leaf after their starting quarterback got injured in the middle of the season. He started 3 games for Dallas that year, winning none of them while throwing just 1 touchdown to 5 turnovers. After Dallas released Leaf in the spring of 2002, the Seahawks signed him to compete for their 3rd-string quarterback job. But this is when Leaf realized there was something mentally going on with him. He couldn't get out of bed and just felt sad all the time. After not showing up for training camp, he called the Seahawks and told them he quit. Just like that, after only 4 seasons, Ryan Leaf's NFL career was over. But unfortunately, things were about to get even worse for him. In his first year out of the league, Ryan returned to San Diego to be a financial consultant. One night, while at a boxing match in Vegas, Ryan was offered a painkiller. He took it and it numbed all the bad thoughts he was having about himself, but then he became addicted. A few years later, he wanted to get back into the college football world, so he went to West Texas A&M to be a volunteer coach. But after 2 years at the school, he was put on indefinite leave after asking a player for a pill. Then in 2009, news broke that Leaf was indicted for reportedly breaking into an apartment and stealing pills that were prescribed to an injured player on the team. In 2010, he pled guilty and was sentenced to 10 years of probation. Before being sentenced, Leaf was in treatment and was actually sober for a few months, but after being prescribed painkillers for gout in his foot, he relapsed. The medical issues continued for Leaf, as in 2011, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. The tumor had to be surgically removed and Leaf had to go through a radiation treatment. While undergoing radiation, Leaf didn't tell the doctor about his history with addiction and was giving painkillers. In 2012, while back home in Montana working on a farm, Ryan was arrested for burglary, theft, and drug charges. Just 4 days later, he was arrested again after a homeowner found him in their house and later realized their prescription pills were missing. Leaf has since come out and publicly said around this time he tried to take his own life. Eventually, Leaf was sentenced to 7 years in prison. His cellmate, while incarcerated, helped Leaf turn his life around. He convinced Ryan to come with him to the prison library to help inmates read who didn't know how to. This experience sparked a change in Leaf. In December of 2014, he applied for parole and was released on probation. When released, Leaf, with his new attitude, would serve meals to the homeless and pack duffel bags full of his old Nike sponsorship clothing to give to inmates when they first got out of prison and needed some new clothes to wear. After spending time in a treatment facility in Malibu, he started working in a sober living home, helping those battle addiction just like he did. Ryan continues to share his story in hopes of helping those going through the same struggle he once went through. Ryan Leaf is someone who was on top of the world and hit absolute rock bottom just a few years later. But I think this tweet from him sums up his story the best. 11 years ago, I woke up on the floor of a prison cell with no idea what could be or what was even possible. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. There is hope.